Good evening. It is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. As Fred mentioned last night, we met Valerie when she was traveling with Up With People a number of years ago. I won't admit how many. And we quickly realized that Valerie had a great career ahead of her. And of course, we were right. Since that time, she has proven that she is a curious and creative learner, which has set her apart in becoming an accomplished leadership coach and professional speaker. For the past 20 years, Valerie's career has taken her to many different countries and to work with many people of different cultures. In addition to working for Up With People, the international leadership program, she has worked with the Dallas Regional Chamber of Commerce, the Hyatt Corporation, in roles focused in public relations, training, recruitment, and leadership development. In 2018, she reluctantly, and I'll let her explain, launched into entrepreneurship as the CEO of her company, Connect to Joy LLC, and I encourage you to go to her website. Since that time, her business has flourished because of her fabulous ability to connect with everyone she meets, and you guys have probably figured that out already by interacting with her. She was born in Panama, and spent the first 9 years of her life there. She loves Latin dancing, playing tennis, and she does claim Dallas is her home, and even has the cowboy boots to prove it, although I have not seen them. And for those of us that were near her last night when the Witch Doctor song was going, she does a marvelous rendition of ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ah. Just saying. I know you will enjoy Valerie's fun, engaging, and playful approach. Please help me welcome Miss Valerie Hope as she encourages us to serve beyond ourselves.
I am not singing a rendition of ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ah. But that was fun. That was fun. Wow, thank you so much. I just, first of all, want to acknowledge Fred and Joyce. It's been 25 years, so if you haven't heard the story, it's been 25 years since we first met, and they made such an impact. In the 5 years I worked Up With People, I lived with nearly 400 host families, and they're the only ones that made the cut. Yes, they're only ones that I've made contact with over all these years, primarily over social media. This is the first time we'd seen each other in 25 years, and it was like no time had passed at all. So that's a testament to their heart and to their generosity. So thank you so much. Best host family ever. So Joyce already mentioned, I'm originally from the Republic of Panama, and I'm honored to have a flag on the stage. My mom would be so proud. So we immigrated from Panama when I was 9 because my father joined the US Army. My mom was a school teacher by trade, but when we came to the States, she wasn't able to work as a teacher because she didn't have the proper documentation to do so. But she found other ways. But with those two people as parents, leadership and service was all about that when we moved around, even if we were going to a new place. We always found something to do. In fact, I have 3 brothers. I'm the only girl. Every summer, we had our summer vacation. My mom would give us 2 weeks. We'd get 2 weeks. We could stay up all night. We could sleep in all day. We could have Pop-Tarts for breakfast, lunch, and dinner if we wanted to. But after those 2 weeks, that summer vacation turned into summer vocation. Because my mom was like, you gotta find something to do, get out of this house. So we, from a very young age, started to get involved in the communities we lived in. My 3 brothers became Eagle Scouts because of their involvement with the Boy Scouts. They always went to summer camp or had other events. I was more of a dabbler. I couldn't quite find the thing. So I would, do something with the church or do something with school or do something with, the community. For me, primarily, if it was gonna be fun, if I was gonna work with people I liked, or if it was something that I was good at, I was in. But over time, as I matured, my mom started to challenge me a little bit. She's like, Valerie, the community needs something. You can't just do the stuff you like. I need you to serve beyond yourself, was her message. which was kind of challenging because I always want to like what I do. That's what makes it interesting. That's what makes it fun. That's what keeps me going. But I did also realize that it is a sense of responsibility that they also ingrained in me that I needed to honor. What's interesting, though, is that the last couple of years have been really difficult for a lot of people. A lot of changes, a lot of challenges. I work with leaders from all over the world who are struggling. They're understaffed in some cases, or the changes that this pandemic has wrought on their industries have made things harder to come by. The level of engagement in the company is also starting to tank in some cases. So the idea of serving beyond yourself seems counterintuitive. A lot of people ready to tap out. It's just been a lot. We've been challenged on all fronts, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, physically. And to think about going above and beyond that, it's a challenge. One of the things that I talk about with my leadership and my leadership coaching is I read a book by Jim Lohr several years ago. And I love this philosophy because he said in his book that the key to personal management, personal excellence, and also high performance is not managing your time. It's actually managing your energy. That's the key. Now, what's interesting is I want you all, obviously you spent the last day and a half, 2 days now, just impregnated with ideas and suggestions for how to grow your clubs, how to become more effective as leaders, how to keep people engaged. But I'd like for you, I'm going to challenge you to listen to this entire speech from a few different places. You could do that from leadership in your club, but also think about the leadership in your home. Think about the leadership in your workplace. Think about the leadership in your communities. And where might you support the people around you? Now, this idea of managing your energy, I found one quote that resonates the most with me, and Fred, you may have seen that on my signature in my email, is from Howard Thurman. He was a theologian, also a mentor to Martin Luther King, and he says, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs are more people who have come alive. And that's been my motto, right? As my mom has been challenging me to serve beyond myself and trying to figure out, okay, what's aliveness? How does that work? And I read an article in the New York Times recently, and they had two different examples, two different models of aliveness. One from the great lover Casanova, and you can imagine his was all about passion and spontaneity and variety. Right? It's a model of aliveness. The challenge is he left so many broken hearts that at the end he ended up alone and isolated. So aliveness and passion, great, but there's a limit. In the article, they also contrasted Casanova with a German philosopher, Immanuel Kant. And Immanuel Kant was all about obligation, duty. Finding your purpose within obligation and duty, that's when aliveness happens. Now, both of those are valid. The challenge is, I think there's some middle ground somewhere. Neither of them, when you think about obligation and duty, all of it can be so monotonous that we don't have any room for inspiration. So I think there's a way to get to middle ground. How we get there, I don't know. I have no idea. I have no answers for you today. None. Sorry. But I do have questions. I'm a coach. That's what I do best. So I'm going to share with you 3 areas that you can use to self-reflect and think about, is this what aliveness looks like for me? And will this provide me with the path to serve beyond myself? Deal? So you're going to have to ask yourself these questions as I share them with you. Right on. Well, first of all, the first area you want to look at is you want to look at being emotionally conscious. Being emotionally conscious is all about understanding what actually makes you come alive. What does being alive feel like to you? So we'll talk about that. Next, we'll talk about how to meaningfully connect with others so that you can expand and actually make that vision come to fruition. And then lastly, we're going to take a look at how can you courageously create, be courageously creative So you can take your resources, you can take your talents, and actually make something special happen in the world. So those are the 3 areas. So talking about emotional consciousness, I remember years ago in Dallas, I attended an event. It was for Latinas in professional settings, and I was sitting at a table, and I was eavesdropping, not on purpose. You know how you're there, and all of a sudden people start talking something interesting, and you go, So there were a couple of young Latina professionals talking, and they were talking about how the speaker was really inspirational. I was not the speaker, but the speaker was very inspirational to them. But they felt that they'd missed out because they were like, wow, I wish I had a mentor like that when I was in high school or I was in college. It would have made such a difference. You know, they said that their parents were they're immigrants and were not familiar with the university system in the US, so it was hard for them to navigate that on their own. But also going into corporate America was difficult for them because their parents didn't have the knowledge and the skills to help them navigate there either. But on top of that, the mentors that they did have either didn't understand or value Latin culture. So it made it difficult for them to walk a fine line between how to move forward in the workplace and how to do it from a place of integrity. And as I overheard their conversation, I remember feeling a sense of pride because I'm like, yeah, my mom really prepared us. We had summer vacation for years and years. But at the same time, as I felt this level of pride, I also felt guilty because I hadn't really gone out of my way to mentor young people. I'd done it accidentally if I happened to go to career day of some sort, but I never actually went out of my way to think about how can I pass this forward? I'm also an immigrant. My parents didn't study in the US. They didn't work in corporate America, and I found my way, primarily because they gave us the environment and the tools to know how to navigate. I remember for the first time realizing, okay, I have a role to play here. Talk about obligation and duty. But I need to find a way to do it with some passion. So I reached out to a mentor of mine, and I said, okay, where can I work with young people who are immigrants or Latin in the Latin culture? Where can I make a difference? And she connected me with a college readiness program for 7th to 12th graders right there in Dallas. The majority of the students that go to those schools are from refugees, families, and I taught public speaking and professionalism. Win-win. So I met the obligation, and I also had an opportunity to support them in things that I liked. But had I not paid attention to that inner voice, that emotion, I would have missed it. So here are my questions for you. When have you heard a conversation, perhaps read something in a book, and you found some emotion arise for you? What was the emotion? Was it excitement? Was it aliveness, energy? Did you have perhaps some goosebumps, inspiration? Or did you feel depressed, sad, discouraged? Emotions are a great piece, they're great information for us to pay attention to. If you can't label the emotion, I always say, check out the body sensations. Those are also very telling. Sometimes goosebumps are a sign of inspiration, a warm flush washing over your body, perhaps your stomach tightens up in a knot, some tension. Again, great information. So just notice that being emotionally conscious could give us a path to know what to move towards or what to move away from. Next, I want you to think about, once you've dialed into those emotions and sensations, where might you share those, which is what I did with my mentor. So that takes us to how to meaningfully connect with other people. Now, my mom and I do a lot of travel together, and so happened back in 2010, we took a trip to the Dominican Republic. It was a national vacation, thank goodness. And we stayed in this resort, and as we were walking back and forth through the lobby, there was this booth with this guy wanting to do timeshares. You know, they take you into this little room. Yeah. So every time we walked past, he would say, hey, come to the timeshare meeting. We're like, no, thanks, no, thanks. Eventually, we just gave up and said, okay, fine, we'll go to the meeting. We thought we'd get him off our backs. No, they actually double down when you do that. Rookie mistake. This gentleman, his name is Caliph. We walked through the lobby the day or two after this timeshare talk, And my mom had gone to the beach a little bit earlier than me, so I came down to the lobby, and Caliph said, Valerie, Valerie. I was like, hey, I'm going to the beach. He goes, I know, your mom's at the beach. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go meet her. I'll walk you. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I know how to get there. And he's like, no, it's no problem. And I'm like, no, I don't want to talk about timeshares anymore. But as a coach, I learned people will, if I ask questions, he can't sell me on stuff. So just a pro tip for you. Ask questions and you can derail any conversation. So I started asking him questions about where he was from and what he did outside of work. And it turns out that Caliph and his wife had immigrated to the Dominican Republic from Haiti about 20 years before. And I said, well, what do you do outside of work? He said, well, my wife and I actually have a little school that we set up. And I'm like, a little school? I felt some goosebumps. I'm like, whoa, what do you do in this school? And he said, well, earlier this year we had one of the most terrible earthquakes. This was in 2010. He had one of the most terrible earthquakes. We had tons of refugees that came from Haiti to the Dominican Republic. Many of them empty-handed, had nothing. They didn't have the proper documentation to go to Dominican schools. And we just couldn't bear to see all these kids in our neighborhood or in the streets doing nothing. So we pulled what we could together and we have a little school. I mean, I was so excited when he was sharing that. I'm like, you gotta meet my mom. She's an educator. She would love this. So sure enough, we get to the beach. I tell my mom all about it. Next thing I know, next day, we go visit the school with Caliph. We meet his wife. My mom was so in love with this project that she said, I'm coming back next year, Caliph. And there we go, vacation turned into vocation. So the next year, we go to the Dominican Republic, but this time it wasn't just me and my mom. This time my mom brought 2 doctors with her who brought tons of medical supplies, and they performed all sorts of checkups and basic first aid for the kids. We took tons of books and school supplies and a musician to entertain the kids, and we spent 2 days, not a lot, drop in a bucket. But had we not shared, I mean, thank goodness for timeshares, right? Had I not stopped to have that little conversation and notice that emotional consciousness, to have connected in that meaningful way. Now, it didn't end there. My mom actually connected with a church that was doing this on a regular basis, and for years went to the Dominican Republic to serve. So it's so important for us to think about who might we share our message with? Who might we share how we're feeling, what we're thinking? Who have you not shared it with that needs to know? Who might you connect with that's doing something meaningful that you enjoy, that this is an opportunity to expand it even further? This idea of meaningful connection is very powerful. Ideas only grow stronger when they're shared. Now, lastly, once you have all of this information, you've got an opportunity to connect with someone in a meaningful way. Now we got to be courageous in what we create. Now, there was a few days ago, I went to a workshop, and this gentleman from China shared with us that he lived in the San Francisco area for many, many years. And one day he was out walking. He lives in a very affluent neighborhood. He was on his phone talking to a friend in Mandarin. So as he walks down the street, a jogger runs by and nearly bumps into him. And the jogger turns and says, hey, watch where you're going. And first of all, either leave the country or learn to speak English. And this guy was stunned. He had never had a personal experience of Asian hate. This was just a year ago. We know that it took a spike during the pandemic. And up to that point, he said, Valerie, I'd always I'd had that mentality of being the model minority. Just keep your head down, just do your work, just be good, don't say anything, just keep trucking. But that moment, I realized, this is what I've been listening to on the news. This is what's been happening to so many people in our communities. That activated him. After that encounter, he actually rallied a whole bunch of leaders from the Bay Area and San Francisco, also in China. He got 5,000 leaders, and they all started to contribute all sorts of funds. They had raised up to $3 million so far to support efforts around ending Asian hate. But not only that, he brought it closer to home. He works for a large tech firm in the Bay Area. And he realized that, this idea of being a silent minority, being a model minority doesn't work. So he's now training and encouraging his employees how to speak up, how to say something when something is wrong, because it hadn't worked up to then. That's being courageously creative, going above and beyond yourself and what your culture or what your nature may be, to do the right thing. How many of you have seen the movie Black Panther? Oh, y'all need to get out more. What? It's on Disney Plus. It's really good. No, it's actually on Netflix. So I encourage you, that's your homework assignment, or at least one of your homework assignments, to watch the movie Black Panther. It's a great movie. It's a superhero movie. You're going to cry and laugh and be really proud. In any case, in the movie, the main character, King T'Challa, he shares an African proverb that's really powerful. And he says, in times of crisis, the wise build bridges, while the foolish build barriers. You know it. You watch Black Panther. You know that, yes. It's beautiful. So we have to find a way, he says, to look after one another as if we were a single tribe. So this gentleman from China, he found a way to build a bridge. How might you build a bridge where you see one missing? Is it time to break down some walls, some barriers? Where have you been tolerating being uncomfortable or tolerating resignation? Who in your community could use a spark like you to go do something meaningful, do something that takes a little bit of courage? Now, as I close, there's a quote from Dr. Lila Watson, and she says, look, if you have come to help me, don't waste your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. This is a time when all of us are being called forth as leaders to go above and beyond what we always do. Business as usual is not working. It is an opportunity for us to go beyond and to not even go out, to really go deep. It's an opportunity for us to go deep. There's change on a global scale happening all around us. People who have been programmed and lulled into being in survival mode for way too long, longer than is humanly feasible, really. You all have the power, the knowledge, the heart, the passion, the duty, the obligation to create something that helps this planet and the people in it thrive. That's what we're called to do. And I want to challenge every single one of you. If you haven't already shared with people what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, connecting with people in a meaningful way, finding ways to be courageously creative and building some bridges or busting down some walls, that's your call to action here. That's the opportunity you have to make a change and to go serve beyond yourself. Thank you.